broadcasting live out of a basement in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox City's Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. Tae The Neighborly. They're a band from Wisconsin that specializes in catchy, soulful pop and R&B based tunes. This past June, they released their debut album, Self-Help. The album was just recently made available on sweet 180-gram vinyl. They'll be hitting the road next week on a West Coast tour. I'd like to welcome Tae and Daniel from Tae The Neighborly to Fox City's Core. How are you guys doing today?
Just peachy. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're doing great. Thanks for having us here.
Congratulations on the album. It's always exciting to get that vinyl in your hand for the first time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really the only reason to record in my mind.
And this album has been in the works for a while. You started releasing singles in 2023, right? I think you released a couple singles in that year, and then it officially came out in June of this year. Is that accurate, or am I off base here?
I think the timeline is maybe even longer than that. We've maybe lost the exact script, but I want to say that
21.
21 was the first time we were in the studio working on music that became something on Self-Help. Specifically, the first track, We Can Be, was at this really great studio up in Minneapolis. And everything ended up getting recorded there, but just because of the way that, lives are crazy, time is crazy, we got it all going, and in 3 years worth of recording, finally made it onto that 180-gram translucent, colorful vinyl.
Yeah.
You guys would describe yourself as a COVID band? Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah. We kind of joined forces in COVID the most. I had just a solo record that I put out and released on the new year of 2020 when everything was starting to go down. And so obviously there's a space and time where people started to not play out anymore, and it kind of turned to an online adventure. But we were getting together with each other and, learning songs and writing and whatnot.
Well, in the official bio story is that you were living in an apartment. And Daniel, I heard you on an interview where you sort of spilled the beans on that.
I did spill those beans, didn't I? I think there's a nice little cautionary tale here about careful what you put out into the world, because you never know what's going to stick around.
But
certainly nothing bad has happened because of this, but it really is true that it was one of the first shows we were playing as a band. It was a high school auditorium show or something. We were such a new band, we literally had no bio. We didn't even, if you would have asked us, who are you, we would have probably gone slack-jawed and we're here. That's who we are.
Had an identity crisis.
Yeah. And so just because this place wanted to print something in their flyer at the show, it wasn't even going online as far as we knew. It was literally 4 pieces of paper that they were going to put in chairs where we were playing. We just had to put something. So I fired up the old truth machine and got a 100% accurate version of how we all met. And so this thing that was supposed to be on a bunch of chairs in a high school auditorium made it onto the internet. And I think probably because it was the first thing of us that made it online, it stuck. And I don't always say it's not the truth. So
we go about half and half. We'll go along with it sometimes just because it's just amazing that it has stuck around and people truly believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it really has stuck around.
crazy that you did that bio for one show and then it just hangs around. And did that, as far as doing interviews and things like that, or getting written up for other shows, is that a thing that you don't mind following you around, or is it?
Oh, it's totally fun. I love it. Yeah. What's the saying? Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And so the story went, you guys lived on a different floor. Each band member lived on a different floor of the same apartment building. So you want to explain it, Daniel, since you were the author?
Oh boy, you're gonna make me spin that yarn again, aren't you? Woo. I wonder if I can even say it the way that it was originally printed.
You don't have it memorized by now?
Oh, God. It was, each of us lived on a floor of, I think I said a condo building. I don't think I even said apartment. And we all only had one of the ingredients to bake a cake. And we had to bake a cake because it was social isolation times. And if you don't have cake and you're lonely, what are you doing with your life? You can be lonely and have cake, and it's fine, I guess. So we all joined our forces and realized, wait, you play bass, you play drums, you play guitar, you sing, you play keyboards?
It's all very coincidental.
Yeah. Who'd have thunk?
It could happen, and I'm glad I didn't run with that. After I heard the other interview.
No, it's okay. If you would have gone with it, we would have, on the drive here today, we were wondering, okay, which
yes
of the,
or no today?
Yeah, which of the five of us had the flour, which had the eggs, who had the sugar? We gotta get the story straight.
So where did you meet and come together as a band? Can you tell me the origin story of Tae The Neighborly?
So, like I said, I kind of started rolling the ball of band life when I was putting together this original first album of mine. And I remember, I think the first person I approached was Kelvin, and I'd seen him play at the Blue Opus, which is no longer, and it was a Green Bay venue, and it was awesome. And I went up to him, and I was just shy as can be, still am. By the way, Andy and I have been trying to make this work forever, and I have been putting it off for months because I'm shy. And but I had walked up to Kelvin, just red in the cheeks, like, "Hi, would you play on my stupid little album and stuff?" And he agreed to do so, and he showed up. And I think he did everything in like 1 or 2 takes. And I just was like, that's the one. That's the one. That's the one. Okay, bye. And, that turned into doing some release shows. And it was going to only be that and then go off in our separate directions. But for the release show, I then, had Kelvin on and then got him to agree to come and hang out with me for a couple of shows. And then I'd played a show opening up for Feed the Dog, and I was watching Dave, who was our bassist at the time, play the bass, and he was just so relaxed with it, and it wasn't really the genre that I was into or, writing, but I also knew that he was kind of a funky, just kind of go with it guy, and we kind of hit it off as buds, and so he was willing to play with me at that time. And then fast forward, I reached out to Andy out of pure recommendation. I'd never heard him in my life. For you that don't know, Andy is now my lover man and baby daddy and best thing in my life. But funny enough, I'd never heard him before we played. It was pure recommendation. I didn't really know any drummers in the area, and he agreed also to play on my stupid little adventure. And then we originally had a pianist named Chad, and that ended up not really working out, and Andy had the connection of Daniel, who was down in Nashville at the time, and we were just kind of going through a player change and just kind of like, are we going to keep playing shows or not? And Andy's like, I've been wanting to bring this person in for a while, and I think that you would really love, what he does. And Daniel just has this kind of real confidence, and he's kind of like outspoken in his music, and that was exactly what the band needed. And I feel like that kind of inspired us to keep going on with the shows. But that's how I met all the guys, and now we have added a new bassist named Will, and he is the funkiest funker all around. So I'm really excited to introduce him to all of the listeners as well.
We can go back a little further. What Love is a different style than Tae The Neighborly. It's more, I'd say, pop. I don't know if you
Yeah, it's
agree with that.
definitely way more ballady, and yeah, in my mind at that time, I wanted it to be very like strings, like big band strings driven. And now I feel like it's definitely more. We try to keep it minimalist, but still just like celebratory and funky. So
The first time I heard your voice, it was for Matches Burn, and the thing that struck me was you've got a voice that's different than what I was accustomed to hearing in this area. It was a very soulful voice, and it also had the quality of a slight subtle decay at the end of your phrasing, which was, I thought, pretty unique. As far as the Tae The Neighborly material goes, it seems to go more into like a soulful genre. Meaning Kelvin, first of all, how did that change your guitar playing?
oh my gosh. I was recently looking back at videos, even just a few years ago, like when all of this was starting to come together. And just, I feel like he was a big push for me to change, over to an electric guitar even, which is a whole other animal in its own. And then, introducing pedals to me, I remember he kind of gave me my first couple pedals to try out and just take home with, and he's like, why don't you try these, And I feel like, yeah, he's just constantly showing me different ways to play things, and I don't know, I'm definitely not the most natural when it comes to guitar. I feel like vocal is my first instrument, so he's been a great teacher in my life to have around.
Well, and if this is true, I've read that you started singing first, and you had a backup band, or you would get other people to play with, and you would just sing, and eventually you self-taught yourself guitar using the internet. Is that true?
Yes. So way, rewind. My stepdad, John, he actually kind of taught me my first guitar licks, and he would play with me sometimes, and I feel like I was really inspired to hold my own, because I really wanted to play out, and so I was doing these 4 or 5 hour cover song show, and just putting the pedal to the metal at all these dive bars, and he'd come up with me and play sometimes, and but I was mainly like learning from YouTube, and just kind of by ear, making up my own versions of Billie Jean, or just all of the 80s and 70s hits. And then fast forward, I started to play with this girl named Maddie, and we were also doing, the dive bar circuit, and that was fun. She would mostly play the guitar while I sang, and sometimes we would both play at the same time, but mostly like same chords, same everything at the same time, hit it. But yeah, and yeah, I think that's it.
Were you drawn to music pretty early in your life?
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like it's always been around me, and but I've also found my way with it. My mom always tells me that when I was a baby, she had these big subs in her giant Chevy, and she would throw me in the back and turn on bass music, and that's how I would fall asleep. Yeah, I feel like as long as my memory goes, I've always been into it. And then obviously throughout my teenage years, I clinged on to it because it was some sort of sense of identity. Even up until now, I feel like, the next thing that I've been able to identify with that is truly me is being a mom. So, music and mama.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to that topic because that's a huge one.
Yeah.
You were born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yes.
What was the scene like? When did you get connected into the scene? What were your impressions of it originally?
Well, I've lived all over the parts of Green Bay, and then I actually went to like high school and kind of lived out near in the cornfields more so in middle school and high school. I was in Pulaski, which is less of a scene there. It's more polka driven. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I still kind of struggle to find my way in Green Bay because things are always changing. Venues are always changing or going under. And it's awesome. There's a great, like, R&B hip-hop scene there. But still, even, I feel like, I mean, we love playing at Ledgestone and in the past lyric room. And, yeah, I feel like, the bar scene was where I began, and that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing still, is because people in that scene have pushed me along and gave me their contacts on to the next thing. And yeah, I'd say it started with the dive bars.
And what kind of experience did you have in the scene prior to releasing What Love Is? Was it difficult to get your foot in the door as far as promoting that first album?
Yes and no. I feel like there were a few people that really, because I had lived I went to school in Milwaukee for a little bit, so I met a few people out there, and I guess met other creatives that were a little bit further along than me and more acquainted with people in the scene. And people were really generous in helping me with that, with like, here, reach out to this guy on this radio, reach out to this person, and they'll, talk to you about what your album's about and whatever. I feel like as a young girl in this scene, it was a little bit hard to break into, just because I feel like it's something that all musicians kind of need to go through, is the hardships of being told no, or like you're not good enough, or even more particular things like you sound like a whale, or just kind of more dark things, but in reality help you to refine yourself. And I was constantly practicing to get better, so I'm like, I won't be told no. I'm coming back, and I'm gonna come back and hopefully be connected. So I feel like Appleton was a great landing spot, especially like Gibson Music Hall. They have had me time and time again, and anybody who has seen me there has probably seen me go from, a 15-year-old, kind of outgoing, crazy gal to, I feel like I'm a hermit that writes things from way deep into the rabbit hole of my mind now. So,
did you get a lot of criticism? You said people would say you sing like a whale. Was that an actual criticism?
Yes, I have gotten a lot of criticisms, but I don't know. I don't really like tattoo them onto my skin or anything. I feel like initially it's kind of like, ooh, that kind of stings, but it's all the more reason to pick apart why they would say that. Or, I mean, sometimes there's no use in doing that, but yeah, people are honest or opinionated, or, have their own palette that they prefer. And I'm not always going to be that, so.
Daniel, you were down in Nashville.
Yes, indeed. What a place.
Are you from the area, or did you?
I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin called Baraboo, which had a fun little microcosm music scene of its own. But most of my adult life, I lived either as a musician on the road. Sometimes there wasn't even a place. The house truly was whatever minivan or van we were touring in, to eventually I landed on living in Nashville for most of my adult life. And, it's a wild place. There's so much music that happens down there in so many ways. It's not just the carnival ride country music thing that people know about, although certainly that's there too.
How's the cost of living?
I don't live there anymore.
So how did you find out about Tae? When was your introduction to Tae as an artist?
Sure, yeah. So Tae mentioned Andy, our drummer. I'm probably not going to even remember the first time I met Andy, but for a long time I knew Andy as another person floating in the world of music and bands, and he played with all sorts of different groups. I also was playing in all sorts of different groups as a keys player. And if you play one of the instruments that isn't guitar, you can always find these places where like there's gonna be a band that needs a drummer or a bass player or a keyboard player or, you know, whatever. Bands always have guitar players. Sorry, Tae. And so I knew Andy from this world of the world of players who got out there and did stuff. When COVID hit, I probably don't need to stretch your imaginations very far to tell you that being someone who made a living playing live music was a bad spot to be in when everything hit the fan. I mean, it was a bad spot to live in for everyone. That's not unique to musicians. But it was indeed real bad. And it wasn't even that you couldn't find shows, because I think as soon as, because I don't remember exactly, but roughly May of 2020, you could find shows in Nashville. And let me tell you what, they are not shows you would have wanted to play. They were so rough for lots of different reasons. There were, so on Broadway in Nashville, which if people listening don't know, when you imagine the picture of Nashville where, you know, there's all the neon lights and there's country bands playing every 5 feet, you're thinking of Broadway. It's very different than New York City. Broadway musical is Broadway. So Broadway country music in Nashville is where a lot of the spectacle happens. And you could totally get a gig playing stuff on Broadway. But there were all these constantly shifting rules. I'm sure everyone remembers of the, like, you can have 10% capacity. And so, you know, there'd be 10% of the people in this room. And the clientele that you were playing for were all the people who were most excited to say that COVID isn't real and this isn't a real thing. And let me tell you what, that crowd is generally not the best tippers. And add in the fact that that's also 10% capacity and you're still just getting paid on tips. Like, bad situation, bad vibes. It was time to get out of Nashville for me. And so when I was back up in Wisconsin talking with Andy, he said, there's this band he's playing with. Maybe you should come up and hang and see if the vibe is there. And I guess the vibe was there. It was immediately a breath of fresh air coming from, I mean, I still love playing country stuff, and I love the people I know in Nashville, and I still play country music, and it's a great time. But the shift from, you know, you're playing someone else's song in some venue that no one cares who the keyboard player is, to there's this squad and we're playing our songs. It felt like I was finally in a band again and not just another faceless hired gun dude. It was such a great feeling starting to play with everyone.
So did you saw them like rehearse, or when was the first time you saw?
It was at a rehearsal that I was a part of. It
so
really was Andy, the drummer, just saying, hey, come on over. Okay.
Almost like a non-audition audition kind of.
Yeah, I guess. Were you auditioning me? You were auditioning me, weren't you?
I mean, we were observing you.
Yeah, observing.
It was like the first song that we played, and Daniel just is ripping it on the organ, and I'm like, all right, we're done. I don't need to hear anymore. This is it.
I remember how much fun it was being in a space with, you know, Tae and the cats, of how different everyone felt as musicians. In Nashville, there's a lot of a race to sound really good in a particular way, which is great, and there's lots of people who sound really good in that particular way. But the notion of being down there and being part of a band where there's a jazz guitar player, a funky jam band bass player, what kind of drummer is Andy? A good drummer.
A good drummer. A good drummer.
Oh, what a drag. I don't know, I feel like at the time, if I had to think of what kind of drummer Andy was, I would have thought he's gonna roast me for saying this, but I think of like hardcore bands. I think I imagined him as more of a, I'm gonna screw up the names of the genres so bad here that I can't say screamo. No, he wasn't playing screamo. He was playing screamcore, dude. It's like totally different.
It's like rockcore.
Yeah, rockcore.
It's rocky.
He was a rock drummer. Yeah, let's say that, a rock drummer.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, baby. And Tae's got this awesome soulful voice, and here I come with a head full of country music piano and like country music Hammond organ stuff, and I had a whole life before that of playing in like sort of folk rock sort of stuff, and it was so much stinking fun being in that room with such different personalities, but all the musicians were still had their ears open. We were listening. And because it was still COVID times, there wasn't a bunch of shows, so there was no pressure to like, we gotta gig, let's go, let's get the show on the road. There was time to figure it out and vibe it out and see what works, see what didn't work. And it was in that fun soup that the sound that we kind of landed on for Self-Help came to be.
Yeah.
It's, as we talked about, it was in the works for a long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we started recording We Can Be back in, I think, 21, and then, we've gone back to the studio, I think, 2 times after that to record like 3 songs at a time, and then eventually they all got together on an album.
There was always very fun, at least at worst, type 2 fun. At best, it was fun in the moment too. Experiences in the studio, taking these songs just because I was just talking about how it felt so fun to be making music in a situation with musicians of a bunch of different colors. We had these versions that we were doing live, and anyone who's ever tried to make a record knows that things that work live don't always work well on a recording and vice versa. And it felt like, even though a lot of us in the band have been making records for a long time, it was a new flavor of how do we take this live thing that works so well and crystallize it down into a song on a record that you can just click play on.
Yeah. Not so loosey-goosey, a little bit more to the point, and shave off all the fat and not feel bad about it.
And not feel bad about it. We're still working on that.
Yeah.
Well, as far as like playing it out, did you go in and record and then all of a sudden play something different live and, oh no, I wish we would have recorded it like this, and back to the drawing board?
Yeah, there's a lot of that sometimes, I feel like. Even still, like, for every practice that we get together on, we're constantly changing the way we're playing things, or just kind of leaving space open to interpret in the moment. And I feel like we've, come up with different ideas, better, I don't know, since we've slapped them onto an album. But if anything, I feel like when we were in the studio, we got the most like surge of ideas of like, all right, there's so many more things that we can add into our live show, while also simultaneously cutting the fat for the recording.
Mm-hmm.
So the title of the album is one of the tracks on the album.
Yeah.
Why did you go with that as the name of the album?
So I actually had in my mind that the album was going to be called like Self-Help the Lifetime Tour. I feel like it sounds kind of like a tragic thing, like, just self-help has kind of a notion of you're in a bad place and so do better or whatever. But I wrote self-help from a place of like, let me think. Kind of a place of like, you don't have to, ask people permission of where you should go in life. And, we're not supposed to be copy-paste people. We're supposed to have our own journey, our own thoughts, opinions, direction. And I feel like especially like as a musician, and I'm sure other people deal with this too, we're constantly being told like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and you should feel that way. And this song was very much about like finding yourself and trusting your intuition and grasping a hold of your gut feeling, which I've always tried to keep in check with myself. And that record all kind of has to do with that kind of mindset of, being strong in who you are and trusting your gut and being your own individual person and embracing that. Yeah, I feel like just it's about trusting in your journey and, not letting the downs get too down on you and also embracing the highs. So
I'm pretty sure I told you that we need to shorten the title from Self-Help the Lifetime Tour to Self-Help because it would fit as a knuckle tattoo.
Yeah, that is actually the reason why we went with that.
Yeah. Trim the fat,
We've got a question here. Todd Belke. Wow, Todd's in a lot of bands.
Oh, yeah, Todd.
Horace Green.
Hey, Todd.
Wow, North Wind and the Sun. Walt Hamburger, on and on and on. He's got a question. Do you all have an example of what the fat is when you would shave off an album? That you would shave off an album. What's the fat that you would shave off an album?
A lot of our live show came from a jammy place, and it's a super great place to be live and on stage. But at the end of the day, a recording has to be one version of the song that happens once, and it is the version that happens every time. And so when we have a song and there's longer intros, longer solo sections, longer outros, finding like, what is the essence of this section? How can we make this, minute and a half long intro into a 7-second intro and still keep the same spirit of what's going on and not steamroll the song, but also tighten it up. That's the most obvious, I think. But there also was a lot of something as simple as just like decreasing the number of sections of the song. There was lots of so we would record, when we're in the studio, we would record the song just like we do it live. And then in Pro Tools, the program we used to record all this, we would literally cut the sections of the song out and rearrange them on the DAW on the computer, and see if like, can we shuffle this stuff around to still have everything that needs to happen in the song happen, but now we have, I think, crystallized is a great word. We've crystallized it. We've taken it from this mass of ideas and got as much as possible in a tight little space as possible.
Yeah, I feel like our live show consists of a lot of like interaction and just, I feel like we're always communicating musically, like very in the moment. Whereas, I mean, if we didn't cut the fat, these songs would probably be 8 minutes.
Yeah, we were guilty of having long songs.
And that's okay live sometimes. I feel like there's a time and a place for it, but I feel like a recording isn't always that place. Maybe we'll release some live versions eventually, but yeah.
Well, we've got a question here that actually goes in well, talking about live, even releases. Jerry, great show. Question for both guests. I'm outside listening to the show while blowing and raking the billion leaves in my yard. Nice. What outside activity besides drinking do you enjoy? And also, do you prefer outside shows and festivals or playing inside at a venue? Thank you.
Well, I'll answer the last question first. I feel like we like a mixture of shows. You know, big rooms, small rooms, outdoors, the whole runaround. I feel like that's what keeps us on our toes, and we play differently in each of those spaces. Mm-hmm. And as far as things that we like to do outside of playing music, I would say that we aren't even really big party animals or anything. We're kind of a bunch of old farts, and we'll have maybe a beer and go to bed. But
I don't think I've ever thought about this so directly, but thinking about, do we like outdoor shows or indoor shows better? I think the more, is adverse the right word? The more adverse of a situation, the more I like the show.
yeah,
Like, if it's an outdoor show, I want it to be 105 and humid and full sun and everyone's sweating, and just, I want to feel like the sun's beating down on us.
yeah,
And that, and like vice versa on an indoor show, I love like these venues that feel like they're punk clubs where the
Yeah.
walls are painted black and it's all messed up and scratched, and there's 100 million stickers on every pole, and they've all been scratched
Yeah.
off and put new things on there.
or even ones where like our gear doesn't even fit in there because it's so
Yeah,
small.
totally. Yeah, we've been there.
We've
for
played
sure.
some of our best shows like that, where we're just like on top of each other playing.
Yeah, and when you get in these settings where like something very mildly bad, if you even want to use that word, is happening, it makes it feel like everyone's in it together.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Like the people at the show, they're in it. We're getting blasted with the lights. We're here. The instruments are on. Let's do it. Let's let her rip. And those moments are just so good.
Yeah. Bad times are good.
Yeah, bad times are good. Bad times are good again. 2024.
Well, Daniel said when you're playing outside, you want the sun beating down and to be 100-some degrees. How do you feel about that, being
Yeah, I guess I should
standing
ask,
up
huh?
front and singing?
I feel like we're opposites right now. We're not on the same page. I don't deal well in the heat.
Big trouble.
I feel like I am temporarily deceased in the heat. But I do have fond memories of playing in the heat. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Better than coldness.
We're fighting about this now.
Yeah.
Officially.
We are not on the same page.
Oh boy.
Jerry, thanks for the question. And if anyone else has a question, feel free to call it in or leave it in the chat. And if it's reasonable, we'll
Yeah.
address it. So getting back to the album, was there a track that was really, really hard to get just right?
Yeah, there sure was. It was
Yeah.
missing you.
Missing You, and it ended up being probably my favorite on the record, actually,
I think it's mine too. Yeah.
because we just had to whip it in shape so much. We actually had two separate recording sessions where we recorded the whole thing and we were like, that ain't it. And then we went back in and kind of just, it was very experimental, kind of working from the back end of things forward. I know all the vibey stuff in the beginning of that song kind of made it what it is now, and that was not our initial idea.
It was, I think, a big source of the frustration on how do we get this song to sound right is we had a good landing spot. We knew where we wanted to get with a full band vibe, and everyone's in and we're grooving and doing the thing. But the question was, how are we getting into this? What is the big build that lands us on full band grooving? I think it's funny. I don't really remember what we did before the current version. It's one of these things where what finally worked in the end works so well. I don't even remember what the heck we were doing before.
Yeah.
But I think it was some version of like, it was just you singing, strumming one instrument. The little things come in one by one, which is a thing that classically never really works super well on recordings. And it ended up being kind of after the fact not in the nice studio where we recorded most everything, but it was after that was all done and we were all just in our home studio settings, left to be little goblins in the middle of the night with our little blinking lights, figuring out what works. And we definitely landed on sounds that are not the kind of sounds that we would have done if we were all of us guns blazing in a room, shooting noise at the same time.
Yeah. I feel like this song and Let It Rain were kind of like a pillar of taking a new direction, and all of a sudden we were like, oh, this is what we can identify with musically. It just like fits so well. Like, yeah, we definitely have like a funkier, celebratory, kind of soulful side of our music, but we also have this vulnerable bleeps and bloops, as Daniel would probably say,
pops and clicks,
side of our music that we also love very dearly. Yeah, I feel like Missing You has come a long way.
Well, and you kind of explained a little bit about the songwriting process, talking about that, but what is the typical process that the songs go through as far as being written? And obviously it's got to be different than yourself, your first album where it was just you.
Yeah. Well, it usually happens like I'll write some lyrics and like some real bare bones, of just, me and my guitar. And usually the guitar changes quite a bit from when I'm just using it as a tool to write to when the band gets involved. But yeah, I feel like it usually starts with I'll, come up with an idea of words and kind of just a general structure. And then I'll be like, hey, I came up with this new idea, guys. And they will be like, all right, let's do this here. Let's maybe move this around or cut that out. And, usually they'll come up with some, like monumental riff that, everybody knows the song by now.
Yeah,
or
we come up with monumental riffs?
Yeah.
Life rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just did exactly what you're talking about with a song that's newer than the record. We have a couple songs that are newer than the songs on the record. The one in particular I'm talking about is called Good Light. And we just, it was a week ago. Mm-hmm. We were in rehearsal town, and it's a song that Tae's played by herself sometimes at our shows. And we took this vibe that she had, and, we figured out how to pull the moments out of it, find the monumental riffs. In Good Light there kind of is a monumental riff, isn't there?
Yeah.
The Manchester Orchestra turn.
Yeah.
And find the moments, where are the moments, how do we build this up? And it's usually in the setting of running the song over and over again when we all have the fun instruments in front of us.
Yeah, and just kind of trying things out, things that feel good. And if, another bandmate's like, hey, that was cool, usually we'll run with it.
You're always chasing doing something that gets you a stank face from someone else in the band.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate. If you have done that, then you have, lived your life.
But I feel like, usually I, bring the bones to the band, and then we'll kind of toy around with it and play it a few times to maybe see. I feel like the goal is to have somebody, each of us in the band kind of throw ourselves into it and, take your own interpretation out of it and pull what you think would be best in that song. And then, fast forward when we've played it enough at live shows and whatnot, and it has evolved enough, usually we've brought it to be like, all right, maybe we should record this. And then we get together and try to cut the fat, like we've been talking about. And then usually it kind of takes another turn of evolving in some large way. And then, going to the stooge.
Where are you pulling the lyrics from? When are you adding those to the mix of the songwriting process?
I'm actually I feel like I'm always writing. I'll be anywhere, and I just have like a long list of thoughts that I have or words that I have, and sometimes I'll feel inspired to complete a thought and put them all into words together. And I feel like that's usually how my writing process has gone. I haven't had many, sit down for a whole day and chuck out a song. I feel like it's kind of usually coming together over time. But
Let's talk about the album cover. What's that? It looks like a cake, but what is that?
Sensitive subject.
So that is a piece of styrofoam with some Model T grass and tumbleweeds on it and some bushes in there. We got a little plastic animal that I painted and decorated. I made this thing. I had this thought in my mind, and I wanted it to be full of texture and kind of just spoke about, like a celebratory look.
It's a fun thing. It's a fun little guy.
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
I do. It's in my basement right now.
And that the flamingo was not the only one. There was a zebra one.
I made several of these things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There was a zebra one, a flamingo one, a giraffe one, and the flamingo is the one that made it. There's just something about, I don't know, there was something so cool about the flamingo and, how they eat and then they turn pink and whatever. I'll let your mind run with it.
How did you pick out which one you were going to use? Band vote, or were you
voted? We voted.
Flamingo won out.
Yeah.
Well, getting a vinyl made, pretty costly endeavor to tackle that. What drove you to release this album on release on vinyl?
We had to. That's why you make music.
Yeah.
It's always a mess getting all this stuff together, and it takes so long, and it's expensive to make. Yeah. But that's the thing. That's the thing.
That's like the goal.
Yeah, it's always the
goal.
The
ultimate end goal. I feel like, I'm a vinyl collector myself. It's something that I love to do. It's something that I love to share. Andy and I have a collection, and we are constantly spinning records and chilling in our living room and picking apart different mixes and whatever. So I have that side of like just personal enjoyment that I love. And even since we've spun our own record, we've heard different things that we haven't been able to hear yet in other versions of, Wavelength. I don't know.
I've been part of lots of music that was made specifically for, we got to get this on Spotify. We got to optimize it for algorithms so that it gets the most clicks or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of time and place for music like that. I mean, I listen to Spotify playlists that have a certain vibe, and there's lots of great stuff. You do, I'm sure everyone does. But there is for sure an element of soul that making music that's meant for a vinyl has that music like that doesn't. And we just like have to.
There's like tracks on this album that I could hear, like I could picture them in movies. Have you guys pursued the sync license route yet?
Not yet. It piqued my interest though.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a life in that world when I was in Nashville. No question, the peak of that was the prune jingle. If you've ever seen a commercial for Sunsweet Prunes, I was on the squad that wrote that jingle. And what a thing to have done with your life.
Any chance that could maybe come to a Tae The Neighborly show? Maybe you could play the prune jingle?
Oof, we gotta talk to the prune cartel to get their permission now. It was at the very beginning of COVID. There was that was, I think, at the peak of my time in licensing, and when everything dried up, advertising budgets also dried up, and so it was a bad time to be someone working in sync too. It was a bad time for everything. Everyone knows that. But there were some wild times doing that. It feels like all that music is very different than our album Self-Help.
Yeah. I have some friends that, are constantly landing stuff in not only commercials, but also like movies or shows. And I don't know, it's something that I guess I never looked into, but that I should. It's on the to-do list. But yeah, it'll happen eventually.
We've got to talk about this before all the time slips away. You and Andy had a son,
A bebe.
a little baby,
Yeah.
earlier in the summer, right in the summer, beginning of summer.
Yeah, in July.
I saw you on one of your last shows at Dairyland Brew Pub, and
I was around. I was real pregnant.
at that point, Andy was playing guitar with you. It was an interesting dynamic. So you and Andy were both playing guitars. I think he was
Yes.
kind of taking some of the guitar playing load off of you.
Yeah.
How has having a child changed your life, and is it changing the way you look at your music?
It's changed everything. I feel like it has changed my relationship to myself, everybody that I know, and everything that I've ever known, and everything that I do still that seems the same, but it's different to me. I don't know, I feel like when I was pregnant, it's funny that you bring up that show, because I remember that was, one of the last shows that I did while still being so round. And Andy started playing with me at these acoustic shows because my hands would cramp up so bad that I would, give him a look and be like, save me, and he would play. But, while I was playing also, he would play awesome things on top of what I was doing. And since then, we've continued to do shows even after having a baby. And I don't know, it's just so much more fun to play with somebody else and kind of volley back and forth like we do in the band. We consider it our date night now when we go play out our duo shows.
And your child really likes going out to see the shows, right?
Yeah, he loves the music. I mean, we played so many shows with him in my belly. I feel like I've literally played the record to him, or like have sung to him to stop him from crying sometimes, or like my stepdad will play it when he's crying and babysitting him while we're at a show, and he'll completely chill out. It's just what he knows, I feel like. And he's also joined us on the road for 2 tours already now. He's been touring for half of his life.
And you've got a tour, a West Coast tour coming up.
Yeah.
Is he going along with
He's coming along. We're flying out there. We're meeting the boys while they take out the old band van out west, and it'll be an adventure. It'll be our longest tour yet, I'm pretty sure. And
Probably, yeah.
yeah, it's going to be exciting.
And you do tonight, I know this will age quickly, but you're playing the Commodore Club tonight in Appleton if people would like to get out and see you, and you're playing with front person for Natural Satellite.
Yeah, Carly. She's an awesome, also mama lady, but also a very great, just a pure voice, and her cello playing is chef's kiss. So
Yeah, she's great. She's always a Mile of Music list. If I see her name, I'm going there.
yeah, it'll be a great time tonight. If anybody's listening right now, come on out. It's one of my favorite places to be. Patrick, the cocktail magician master, is one of the best around, so he makes incredible NAs and non-NAs.
I really want to talk about this before we run out of time. You played the 2021 WAMI Awards, and to great acclaim. That was one of the most talked about performances, at least that I heard about after the WAMIs there. What was the feedback you received after that?
Man, they recorded that show, and I feel like since they posted that, which I didn't personally think was the best video of us or the best show, but since then, I feel like that really helped us kind of gain some footing shows-wise around here, and I feel like we wouldn't be nearly as matured or have played as much as we have without that particular show that we have a video of.
Yeah, I remember feeling like we were a very out of left field thing happening that night. I mean, most of the people who were at WAMI's, I think, are people who have been to him lots of times and knew what to expect. And I think we were something that was unexpected, and a lot of good stuff came out of that.
I remember being just so, like, just kind of shooken up by how much positive feedback that we got, because it was like a wave of feedback that we hadn't really gotten yet.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Especially from people that, you know, were considered kind of peers to the music scene. I remember feeling like kind of honored that these people who are known in the music scene that I've only seen from afar, never talked to in real life, were complimentary, and I feel like that was a nice bout of inspiration of like, all right, well, we'll keep running with it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where can people find out more about Tae The Neighborly? Where can they get their hands on that vinyl?
Yeah, so if you want to come to a show, we'll have it there. Mm-hmm. We also have a link on our website if you want to go to taeandtheneighborly.com. It will bring you there, and just click around till you see Tae and the Neighborly, and we have a shop on there. I'm hoping to get some t-shirts up there soon too. At a live show, we have limited amounts, so if you're interested in that kind of thing. We unfortunately don't have CDs because not a lot of people were into that when I asked the general public online.
Yeah, too many people have gotten rid of their 2004 Toyota RAV4s.
Yeah. Hey.
So go to the show, pick up a vinyl, or order it on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything like music videos or anything coming out for anything on this album?
We've got a lot of just content still that we're pumping out from shows that we recorded, and you know, we're doing this with you, and we can't wait to share it into the world. We're constantly conjuring up some ideas. So
I do feel like we're always, maybe this is just me, but I'm always chasing a dragon of this setting where we're all in a studio, mic'd up, and doing one-take versions that are filmed. Mm-hmm. Every time I think of this, there's a specific video that I'm always thinking of. It's, what year was it? I think it was 2009. Bon Iver did just him, Vernon and one other guy, I think Sean Carey. And they had two grand pianos facing each other, and they did alternate versions of a bunch of the songs, and it was just disgustingly good.
Yeah. We've always talked about kind of doing some, doing our regular set, but also having something where we go off and bring out these other toys that we like playing with, like the Septivox or, I don't know, there's just so much. The baritone, we want to bring that into the mix and just do kind of like hey, we also do this. And
there's so many variables and so many things we're always chasing. One of these days.
There's a lot on the to-do list.
God.